All right, looks like we are live. Welcome everybody to Standing for Truth. My name is Donnie B, and I am your host and moderator for this much anticipated debate between Kent Hovind and Jay Bundy. Tonight, evolution is on trial. We have had many debates this summer, many awesome, epic debates, but this is the main event. Tonight is a special event as well, as it is Kent Hovind's 300th debate. Both Jay and Kent are no strangers to this topic of evolution, and this will definitely be one to remember. So again, I do want to thank everybody for joining us. I'm looking forward to this. Jay Bundy is an evolutionary biologist, and I do appreciate him being willing to discuss and engage this important topic. Jay, why don't we start with you in terms of introductions? So no opening statements just yet. Let's kind of get to know the debaters and these gentlemen a little bit before we get the party started. Jay, over to you. A little bit about who you are. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate it. I want to send a shout out to my community, the Pocket Locker 86 community. I am the United States champion of Word Wrestling Entertainment, and honored to be here. My name is Dr. Jay Bundy. I am a evolutionary biologist, an experimental evolutionary biologist. My specialty is digital evolution. I graduated a little bit over a year ago from the lab of Dr. Rich Lenski, who runs the E. coli long-term evolution experiment. That was at Michigan State University. My PhD is in integrative biology and ecology, evolutionary biology, and behavior. I also have a master's degree in biological anthropology from Penn State University. I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Minnesota, go Golfers. And I work in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology in the Experimental Evolutionary Lab of Mike Travisano. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm a streamer. I also teach at Michigan State University. I teach a senior seminar in the Lyman Briggs Residential Science College. It's called Darwin's Law. Dr. Robert Pennock is my teaching mentor. I'll be talking about him tonight. He was the expert witness at the Kitzmiller versus Dover evolution trial. And yeah, other than that, I'm a drummer. I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. I like video games. I like, YouTube debates about, evolution and religion and philosophy and all those things. But every once in a while, I got to kick all the Bible and philosophy nerds out of my channel and have some fun. Donnie, you are guilty of an unforgivable sin. You have been watching my atheist content late night and sometimes even at work, and I hope Kent Hovind holds you accountable for that. But I do appreciate it. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for your support. And I'll turn it over to Kent, and if you guys have any other questions, just let me know.
Awesome. Jay, thank you so much for that introduction. I appreciate the enthusiasm. I do have your relevant links in the description box for people to check out. So Kent, over to you. Good to have you as well. How you been, and a little bit about yourself. Oh, Kent, I think you might be on mute. Yeah. I've got you off mute, but it could be your mic. No worries.
There we go. My fault. Okay. Do I have to debate him and the belt buckle?
This you know what I'm saying? That's too much.
That'll be tough. I need
a belt buckle. I got to cheat. I got to cheat to win. If I have a chance here, I got to cheat. Sorry, it's all I got.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to be here. My name's Kent Hovind. I became a child of God. Got born again in 1969. Gave my heart to the Lord. Started going to a little independent, temperamental, fundamental, right-wing, radical, chicken-eating Baptist church. And right away realized what I'm learning in school about evolution is not what the Bible's teaching me, and somebody's wrong. So that began a 53-year study of mine on this topic of creation versus evolution. I am convinced the Bible is literally true, scientifically accurate. God made everything in 6 days. Dinosaurs, stars, universe, everything. Had to. Doesn't work any other way. So I defend the position that the Bible is true, and that the evolution theory is not only the dumbest, but the most dangerous religion in the history of the world. And evolution is a religion. You have to believe these first 5 things: cosmic, chemical, stellar, organic, macro. Nobody ever sees any of those. They're taken by faith, by the evolution. And they don't admit that. All we ever see is variations within the kind, which God said would happen. God said they're going to bring forth after their kind. There are now 400 varieties of cows. Might have had a common ancestor called a cow. It doesn't prove cows are related to E. coli. Anyway, so I defend the position the Bible is true. I think evolution should not be taught in public schools at taxpayer expense. It should be taught in private schools for those who wish to pay and come learn it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kent, for that introduction. Thank you to the both of you, Jay and Kent, for your introductions. I'm looking forward to this. So for the audience sake, we are going to be having format-wise, we're going to be having opening statements, starting with Dr. Bundy here. And then we're going to jump right into a free-flowing discussion where Kent and Jay will be discussing the points and the topic for tonight, evolution on trial. Then, of course, we're going to have an audience Q&A. This is where we get you guys in the audience involved, have a little fun. Make sure you're tagging me with your questions at Standing for Truth, and that way I won't miss them. Okay, with that, Jay, we'll hand it over to you. The floor is all yours, and I can get your slides up. You're good to go.
All right, thank you so much for having me. Our topic tonight is evolution on trial. I want to thank everybody who watches this now or later, everybody in the live chat, everybody in the comment section, and everybody who supports this type of content, no matter what your reason for doing so is. All right, so we're going to be talking today about evolution on trial and what that sort of means from a philosophy of science perspective. When most people think of evolution on trial, they think of the Scopes monkey trial from 1925. There was a high school teacher named John Scopes. He violated a 1925 state law, preventing teachers from contradicting the biblical account of human origins. The testimony of scientific experts was excluded. The very, very conservative judge argued that it wasn't relevant to whether or not he had, in fact, taught the evolutionary account. Scopes was found guilty because he was teaching evolution, and the conviction was overturned because the $100 fine was deemed excessive, which gets us to thinking about how this relates to the nature of science. This was actually a staged battle of interpretations. The trial was staged for publicity, and Scopes incriminated himself to provide a defendant for what was basically a show trial. The trial actually presented a clash of really two theologies. The prosecution represented the evangelical side that said a literal interpretation of the Bible trumps all human knowledge, whereas the defense represented sort of a modernist perspective that evolution was not inconsistent with religion. And of course, the conviction was overturned, but the case failed to settle the matter on a scientific basis, right? It had first done so on a factual basis. Oh, he did in fact teach this thing. And then it was overturned because, okay, the fine is excessive, but we haven't addressed the science at hand. And that happened in 2005 with the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial, which was in the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. And in the end, that judge there ruled that intelligent design is not science. Which brings us to this man. His name is Robert Pennock. He was the expert witness in the Kitzmiller versus Dover trial for the science side. He's a philosopher of science. He's a professor. He's also a digital evolution expert, an evolutionary theory expert. And he happens to be my teaching mentor. We teach our class, Darwin's Law, at the Lyman Briggs at Michigan State University together. And it's a real honor to teach for this person, who's also a close friend of mine. And one of the points that he really made during his testimony that I want to highlight is the constraints that are in place when we're referring to science. He says, as scientists go about their business, they follow a method. It has constraints. It requires that we have testable explanations. It gives natural explanations about the natural world. Intelligent design, specifically creationism, wants to reject that. And so it doesn't really fall within the purview of science. There's another portion I want to read quickly from his testimony that I think is important to our conversation tonight, if I could get it up without showing you guys a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's going to be right here. He says, what one expects in science is that one is going to be testing hypotheses against the natural world. And what methodological naturalism does is say we can't cheat. We can't just call for quick assistance to some supernatural power. It would certainly make science very easy if we could do that. We're forced to restrain ourselves to looking for natural regularities. That's part of what it means to be able to give evidence for something. You've undermined that notion of empirical evidence if you start to introduce the supernatural. And the second part of that is it's important because it makes a difference, okay? That then allows you to practically apply the results of scientific inquiry. When you discover these natural regularities, these causal regularities, you're then able to use them in pathology and so on. And to just take it back to the example of Franklin, Franklin's naturalistic, let's say methodological naturalistic understanding of lightning then led him to be able to invent the lightning rod, which then was a very practical way of stopping buildings from being hit by lightning. So that's a sense in which this is crucial because it makes a difference. It lets us apply the conclusions, the discoveries that scientists make. He then says, I actually recommend that science teachers use evolution as a great example of the application of the scientific method. It's a well-confirmed, interlinked series of hypotheses. It's not just one hypothesis, but a whole range of them that have been tested and well-confirmed. And in the same way that I was describing before, it has practical utility. One can make use of evolutionary knowledge, as scientists do in a range of fields, to social utility. And of course, in the end, there were a lot of other testimony, a lot of other experts and on both sides. And in the end, the judge ruled in favor of evolution. And he said the proper application of both the endorsement and lemon test to the facts of this case makes it abundantly clear that the board's ID policy violates the Establishment Clause. In making this determination, we have addressed the seminal question of whether intelligent design is science. We have concluded that it is not, and moreover, that intelligent design cannot uncouple itself from its creationist and thus religious antecedents. Theodosius Dobzhansky, whose background is very interesting to some theists, said nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. Therefore, the verdict is in. Creationism is not science. However, teaching it is certainly unconstitutional because it violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. I like Kent Hovind, actually. I think he's a nice guy, and he's a hell of a lot funnier than I gave him credit for. But I think he represents a position that is not scientific, and furthermore, really does violate the separation of church and state that is foundational to this country. Evolution is the foundation from which we approach all questions in biology. So the two questions that remain for Kent Hovind is what scientific alternative do we have, and what is the evidence for it? Thanks a lot, Donnie.
All right, Dr. J. Bundy, thank you so much. That was between 7 and 10 minutes. Let me get this off the screen.
Yeah, I got it.
I
think I got like 4.5 minutes left. But like I said, Kent can take as long as he'd like. I have no problem with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And to the audience, I see the questions flying in already. So appreciate it. Very lively chat already. So tagging me will be beneficial. Kent, let's say up to 10 minutes for an opening statement from you. And then we're just going to open it up to dialogue. So Dr. Dino, when you're ready, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Jay, for your presentation. I appreciate that. I don't think you need to carefully define that word evolution. Evolution has 6 different meanings, and one of them is indeed scientific. But this is where the whole problem is. Most of what is taught as evolution is not observable, testable science, and it is a religion. So really, it's evolution teaching that violates the Constitution, separation of church and state. Evolution is a religion in every sense of the word. Nobody has ever seen a cow produce a non-cow. It's never been seen. So I start off by explaining, what do you mean by evolution? Cosmic evolution is the origin of time, space, matter. Where did time come from? Where did matter come from? Where did space come from? Chemical evolution. How did this Big Bang, which is imaginary, never been seen, how did it produce hydrogen and then turn to gold, silver, platinum, uranium? Where did all the chemicals come from? You can't fuse past iron. I cover this in my seminar in detail. Thirdly, there have to be stars and planets evolve. Nobody's ever seen a star or planet form. We see stars blow up once in a while. We've never seen one form, never proven it. So this is something they take on faith. It's a religious view. Number 4 is organic evolution, the origin of life. How did life get started? Scientists can't even start making life in the laboratory, let alone explain how it happened by itself in the wild. These are things they take on faith. Macroevolution would be changing from one kind of animal to another. Most evolutionists tell you macroevolution is just micro over longer periods of time. This is dreaming. The central question of the Chicago Conference was whether the mechanisms underlying microevolution, which is variations, which we all agree happen, can be extrapolated to explain the phenomena of macroevolution. The answer can be given as a clear no. The things that we see causing the variations that every farmer takes advantage of is not going to change it to a different kind of animal. Evolution is defined as a change in species over time, this textbook says. This is propaganda. No, I'm sorry. This is a lie. It's not really what they mean. Sure, we see species change, but they say the same kind. There are, 200 varieties of owls that might have had a common ancestor called an owl. That's as far as it goes, okay? Macroevolution is large-scale evolution. For some, this means the origin of species. Species is also a nebulous term. There are like 21 different meanings in the internet of the word species. For others, it means the large-scale changes seen in the fossil record. I point out, sir, there is no such thing as a fossil record. There are fossils by the billions, but it's not a record. None of them talk. None of them have a date on them. There is no such thing as a fossil record. There is no such thing as a geologic column. All the layers formed at the same time. They say the top layer is younger. I say, really? Where did it come from? Outer space? Think about it. All the layers are the same age, shuffled up in a flood in the days of Noah, I believe, but I'm not demanding that be taught. All macroevolution processes take place in populations and in the genotypes of individuals and are thus simultaneously microevolutionary processes, Mayer says. A vague term for evolution of great phenotypic changes, usually great enough to put the lineage into a distinct genus. Well, that's still the same kind. Man might decide to classify it as a new species. Okay, it's still the same kind of animal. A 4-year-old will tell you that. Evolution on the grand scale. It is a term of convenience. For most biologists, it does not suggest any change in the process of evolution. So, I'll skip all that. The first 5 meanings of the word evolution are purely religious. Nobody's ever seen matter form. Nobody's ever seen chemicals change to a higher chemical without incredible input of energy, and then you can't fuse past iron. Nobody's ever seen a star form. Nobody's ever seen life come from non-living material. Nobody's ever seen any plant or animal change to another kind of animal or plant. It just isn't science. It's a religion that you guys believe in. Number 6, microevolution. Variations within the same kind. Now, this is science. Evolutionary change within a species. I agree. Exploring transitional fossils. No fossil would count as evidence for evolution. All you could prove is it died. You couldn't prove it had any children. In an honest court of law, no fossils would count. You could never prove it had kids that were different from itself. Now, I would like to talk about these family trees that they make. They put these things in textbooks like it's part of science. The human, the bird, the dinosaur, the ladybug, all going back to a common ancestor? Wait. When has anybody ever seen a ladybug produce a non-ladybug? Or a human produce a non-human? Humans are having babies all the time. Has anyone ever observed a human produce a non-human baby? Has anyone ever observed a bird produce a non-bird? It just isn't science. I wish you guys could see it. You make these family trees and draw lines on paper connecting them like that's part of science. It's not part of science. It's a religion. This one says you're a primate connected to chimpanzees and gorillas and monkeys. Well, you can believe that if you want, but that's not observable science. Nobody's ever seen this happen. They make these family portraits and put it in the textbooks, and the kids have to learn this. It is evolution that is a religion being pushed on the taxpayers in the public schools, and that's what ought to be stopped. No, evolution is not part of science. There are no explanations. No, you mentioned in your opening, Jay, about testable explanations. Okay, show me a way to test. Your charts show here we have the bird, the mouse, then the fern related to a common ancestor. How could we test that? How many times have they seen mice in the laboratory produce babies? Lots. Have they ever produced a non-mouse? No. I'm telling you, it isn't science. I wish you could see it. They draw lines on paper, connecting everything. Like, oh, look, it's all connected. Drawing lines on paper, connecting all the various life forms that have never been observed, is not evidence for evolution. You say, we've got a chart. Okay, I could draw all kinds of charts. I could connect a hamster to a Volkswagen. So I could draw a line between them. Doesn't prove they're related. Come on. Listing words or branches of science is not evidence for evolution. Where is the evidence of anything changing? Wade said, Dr. Dino likes to say the dog, wolf, banana are not related. But if we look at our tree of life, they're separated by 2.9 billion cousins. It's a very, very long time ago. Wade, that demonstrates clearly you don't observe it. It's not part of science. I don't think we should teach either science, either evolution or creation in public school. Probably we shouldn't even have public schools. Bigger question yet. But if we're going to have them, teach the kids what we know. Okay, boys and girls, here's the radius, the ulna, the humerus, the biceps, the triceps, the femur. We know that. We've given it a name. We don't know that it came from an ape. But you guys draw lines on paper connecting dinosaurs and birds as if this is somehow now science. So my objection is, before we go very far, I would like Dr. J to explain exactly what do you mean by that word, evolution. Do you mean all 1,000 varieties of bananas have a common ancestor? I would agree. You mean bananas and whales have a common ancestor? I disagree. We better clearly define the term, because you guys connect animals, plants, and fungi with little lines and claim that's part of science. Look, all the varieties of outside that circle, variations happen within the horse family, within the bat family, within the hamster family. Inside that circle is religion. But this textbook says all the many forms of life on earth today are descended from a common ancestor. That's propaganda. That's not science. We don't know that. You can say that over and over again, and you can start believing it yourself even. You can convince yourself, but it's not science. And they say it was found in a population of primitive unicellular organisms. Do you believe a whale came from an amoeba, a single-celled organism? No traces of those events remain. They draw lines on paper connecting, let's see, the human, the bird, the crocodile, and all back to a common ancestor. This is pure religion. This isn't science. Drawing lines on paper doesn't make it true. Nobody's ever seen an amphibian produce a non-amphibian. But they connect, let's see, the turtle, the snake, and the bird, and the mammals. Go back to a common ancestor. This is absolute propaganda. I resent it. Here we go. A protozoa turned to a biology teacher. Dr. J, do you believe your ancestor was a protozoa? This chart shows that. The single-celled creature turned to everything. They draw lines on paper connecting all of them. Yes, boys and girls, the shark and the fern and the starfish and the octopus have a common ancestor, a unicellular creature. This is absolute propaganda. It is not science. Evolution is on trial. I think the first 5 meanings of the word evolution is what we need to try. But you're going to try to hide evolution as meaning variation, microevolution. No. That shouldn't be called microevolution. It should just be called a variation. 20 times in the first 7 chapters of the Bible, God said they would bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody has ever seen in recorded history. Every farmer on the planet counts on evolution not happening above the micro level. He plants corn, he expects to get corn. Crossbreeds his cows, he expects to get a calf. There is zero scientific evidence for the evolution that they teach, that because we see cows produce varieties of cows, therefore cows are related to birds. That is insanity. That is not science. It's propaganda. Thank you. Your turn.
All right, Dr. Hovind, thank you so much for that opening statement. That concludes the opening statements from both Kent and Jay. Gentlemen, lots of good points to discuss. So now we're going to just get right into a more free-flowing discussion, keeping it as equally timed as possible, and of course, civil and sophisticated, the way I like my debate. So, Jay, let's hand it over to you. And since Kent just ended with his opening statement, we'll allow you to pick the first topic, ask the first question, however you want to proceed. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Oh, Jay, I think you might be on mute from your end.
Oh, yeah. Kent hasn't pointed out some of the bigger problems with these things. You know, I actually agree with him that I don't want to talk about any of those things. I don't know about those things. And he says that these things, can I get the list? Yeah. Oh, thanks, Ken. Appreciate you putting that up for me. Yeah, like that cosmic evolution, definitely not my area of expertise. Chemical evolution, don't know nothing about that. Stellar and planetary evolution, nah. Origin of life, Yeah, barely touching that with some of our research theories that I do, but ain't really my specialty. Macroevolution, that ain't really my thing either. Microevolution, like kinda, but mostly virtually. But here's the bigger problem. I really wish these things were not science. Because Kent, are you a minister?
I am a Baptist preacher, ordained Baptist preacher.
All right, it's time for some confession. Good, I got to confess some stuff to you, man. I wish those subjects were not science because as a scientist, I work with people who work on their subjects and they won't shut up about it. And I really wish they would because Kent, what the people at home need to understand is that science is boring. And I'm sorry, I'm just confessing it. Science is boring. And it's boring mostly because scientists are boring. So I'm gonna go ahead and concede that maybe you won the whole debate because I cheated and this is my first real debate, so I don't know what the rules are. But we could concede all of that. I don't have answers for none of that, none of it. So Kent, it's Kent's turn. Kent, we could talk about whatever Kent wants. I'm just having fun with Donnie and Kent, my two new buddies. We're gonna make a little atheist Christian buddy comedy movie series before this is done. That's the real goal of tonight.
Okay. Well, Jay, do you agree? Nobody in world history has ever seen. Let's take one animal, a cow. There are now 400 breeds of cows that are recognized. Has anybody ever observed a cow produce a non-cow or come from a non-cow?
Listen up, scientists. I'm switching teams.
I don't understand. What do you think?
We have never seen a cow.
I can't understand what he said.
We have never seen. I said we're switching. Kent, I'm switching teams. We have never seen a cow come from a non-cow. Kent Hovind and I are laying down the gauntlet, scientists. We don't want to hear no more of these boring lectures, no more textbooks. Get back to us when you guys get in that lab and we see a non-cow come from a. I like Kent Hovind. I was wrong about this guy. Donnie, I see why you hang out with this dude. Kent, what else you got for us? I like this. What else you got? You won that one.
Okay. Jay, do you agree that the students in public schools have to learn from charts like I'm showing here now that would show the cow coming from an amoeba? That's what they're showing. Do you agree that this chart would teach the kids the cow is related to a ladybug?
Kent, they teach that all of these different species share common ancestry, and therefore the claim is that they're related. And I'll give you another thing. They're learning this nonsense from undertrained, overworked, underpaid teachers. So you're right. You're right about the whole public school system. Maybe we just I'm a heel scientist. I mean, scientists don't even really know if I'm on their side or not. So I'm kind of with you, like, okay. Improve it or lose it. That's supposed to evolve, right? Maybe this public school system should be evolving. I don't see much evolving. Maybe the public school system is de-evolving. See, the public school system is really not helping, are they?
Well, good. Well, my mother retired from teaching public school. My only living brother retired from teaching public school. I'm not against school teachers. I taught in private school 15 years. I love teaching. But this chart is not representing science. Science is what we can observe, study, test, demonstrate. Science tells us cows produce cows. It is not science that makes us draw a line to a ladybug, between a cow and a ladybug.
So let me ask you this, Kent.
Evolution isn't science.
How do you think they determine like how to draw the lines?
I think they want it to be true, and so but it's not based on observation. That's my whole point. All the textbooks, I have hundreds of them here, biology, earth science, physical science, from many universities from all different countries all over the world. They all do this stuff. They say, boys and girls, the protozoa, or a single-celled creature of some kind, be it an amoeba, E. coli, or something, bacteria, turned into everything. My whole point is...
And why do they use those Latin words? I don't like those Latin words either, because I don't know what that means. What's a protozoa? What is it, a sponge? I don't. Some of them things they don't even know. Like, is this thing an animal? Is it an animal yet? Is it not an animal yet? You know, I think, Kent, I'm gonna be honest with you. I just do science because they pay me to. I'm just being 100%. I'm just keep it real with you. This is what I got trained at. It's kind of like what they call it, a sunk cost fallacy. Like I spent 3 eternities in graduate school and I was like, this is trash, but might as well get a job. And so they really do. I'm going to just say there's more questions that they haven't answered than questions that they've answered. I'm going to just leave it like that, Kent. I'm just keeping it real with you because I like you.
All right. Well, has anybody ever seen a single-celled creature? I understand you worked with this microbiology for a long time.
Yeah, and they still E. coli. They've been doing this for 30 years and they're still E. coli. Well, there's this one thing that happened, and they were like, "Oh, maybe this thing isn't E. coli," but I don't really care about all that. I still say it's still E. coli. It's still E. coli to me. They're like, "Oh, it does a little citrate thing." I'm like, I'm not really that impressed. Some of the other E. coli do citrate. Maybe it just regained. Maybe it just micro evolved to regain something that it was created with in the first place, and it just lost it in the lab, and then it regained it. It really don't have to be that impressive. And you know what? I know the person who did that. Shout out to Zach, because Zach's one of my guys, but his stuff can't way over my head. When Zach start talking, I'll be like, Zach, get back to me when we talk about my stuff, because I don't want to sit here and talk about citrate.
Well, good. Well, my objection is evolution textbooks teach that a single-celled creature, like a protozoa or an amoeba, turned into a human. Nobody's ever seen any single-celled creature produce anything other than what anybody with a brain would say that's the same kind. E. coli, like you said, still produce E. coli. Now, Lewinsky did a lot of experiments trying to make a lot of changes, spent a whole lot of government money trying to do that.
Yeah,
but
seriously.
He ended up with more E. coli. That's all they've ever done. So it's not observable science. My objection is we should teach science in science class and quit teaching evolution because it's not part of science. It's been included for so long, some people think it belongs. You know,
Right, so Kent, here's a question. Because I kind of started, you know, I come from a Christian family and everything. So when I first started learning science, you might not like this, but I was at a Catholic school, right? And so they pretty much were like teaching what you're saying. They were like, man, science class is for science, theology class is theology, and there's nothing that you're learning in science that's inconsistent with the Bible. So when people tell me that, like, oh, Ken Hovind's going to tell you that he believes everything in the Bible is consistent with science, I'm like, he might be right. Like, I'm not a theologist. I don't know. He could be right. Maybe he's right. So I said, I'm gonna just tell him he might be right. If he does me for whack, I want to be on whack of atheist. All I just say is that if I get on whack of atheist, like give me an extra whack or something. I'm a small content creator. I need some help out here.
Okay.
But yeah, like, you know, I think you're right, Ken. So here's a question I do have though. If it were up to you,
do I need? Hey, Jay.
Oh, that thing is serious.
Jay,
that's like some Triple H. Oh, yes, Kent. Give me the Triple H sledgehammer, Kent, please.
I need the big hammer.
All right. So, Kent, what would you teach in science class about, like, how would you approach teaching students? Like, if they said, and let's not take it out here, but if a student was in science class and said, where do frogs come from? What would you want to teach them in a public school?
Okay. I would say, students, it is obvious there are 7,371 species of frogs. Man has decided to divide. I don't think the frogs care how we divide them up, but unless you're in anatomy class dividing up a frog. I've done that a few times, but a different kind. But there's over 7,000 varieties of frogs. We could say, students, there are 7,000 varieties of frogs. They might have had a common ancestor called a frog, but there appears to be a limit. I could use an example like cows have been trained to jump. I think the world's record now for jumping a cow is 6 feet. Okay, that's impressive. Do you think they'll ever get a cow to jump 5,000 miles? No, there's a limit. The obvious truth is cows have varieties. There's big cows, little cows, more milk, more beef, 400 species of cows, varieties, breeds. They're still cow, and they're limited. You're never going to get a cow as big as Texas. You're never going to get a cow as small as a flea. There are limits. This is what the evolutionists will not admit. Yes, there are variations of whales. There are varieties of sharks. There's some strange humans out there, but they're still human. We should admit, yes, variations happen, but they're limited. Now, that just happens to match what the Bible says they'll bring forth after their kind. And I think the Jersey cow and the Angus cow had a common ancestor called a cow. This is not science to show the kids an amoeba turning to a biology teacher and a bird and a reptile. This is propaganda 101. I think this should be scrubbed from the textbooks. Say, kids, we don't know any of these lines should be drawn. There are lots of turtles, and they probably probably started off as a turtle, and we're still getting turtles from them.
Yeah.
Now that does point to a creation event, but I don't think that ought to be taught in schools, not in public schools. We should teach the kids variations happen, but they're limited. Protozoa produce E. coli. How many different varieties of E. coli did they produce? And they're still E. coli.
Don't ask. I'm not. Yeah, I know. I finished from the Linsky lab, but the other people in the lab is really the bacteria nerds. They could tell you how many E. coli there are. I don't really care. But Ken, I actually kind of like what you something about what you said there. So first off, biologists, listen up. Y'all need to listen to this man Ken Hovind more, okay? Because what I do see is limits. You know, when I did my research, Ken, I'm gonna be honest with you, I saw that history and evolution creates limits. Not all the lineages are capable of all the adaptations. So they are limited. So you're right about that. It's definitely limits, and biologists, y'all need to address what this man is saying. Second of all, I'm tired of the dogma in science. I really am. I'm getting sick of it. Ken, I got to be honest with you. I've started to look at the evolution of bad behavior, bad things, cheaters, parasites, coercive mating. Why? Because I'm going to tell you what evolutionary biologists do to me all the time, right? Here's what they go, Kent. Look at the trees. Look at the genes. Look at the fossils. And I'm like, man, y'all know it's something called the internet where people are playing video games. Nobody cares about this stuff, right? And so what happens is, Kent, they teach this stuff as just you got to accept it. Look, we all evolve. We all share common ancestry. And I don't teach my students that. I teach them scientists are people. They make mistakes. They're motivated. They're getting paid from the government, like you said. They want to look fancy in front of all their friends. And so they be publishing all these papers. And a lot of times, some of their friends, they don't even know it. They call it Kent, double-blind research or whatever. But let's be honest. How many people know these things? Like very few, right? So what they do is they really circle them around themselves. They say, oh, it's double-blind. But when you read the paper, you're like, look, it's only like 7 people in the world who did this. I probably know who wrote this paper, right? Let's be honest. And so that process is very limited, very restrained, full of messy flaws. Probably didn't even work. All right. So then what happens is the students come into the class and the teacher's like, well, this is peer reviewed. It says this in your textbook. Like you said, look at the lines, right? So then when you ask the kid, well, how do you know that an amoeba is related to a donkey? They be like, oh, well, I saw it in my biology textbook. And there are some lines on the picture. And I tell my students, what is that evidence of? Absolutely nothing. A book says a thing. You know when I debate Professor Dave, a book says it. That's his thing, right? A book says a thing, right? So I tell my students, you have to have your BS meter on, right? I'm trying to keep it clean for Donnie. Donnie told me to keep it clean. You got to have your BS meter on. You got to be like, I don't believe something just because some scientist said it in a book. I'm gonna have to go to the literature myself. I'm gonna have to ask them what the hypothesis was. So I think if we did, I might be able to meet you on this. I think if we really did stop teaching this thing like it was so settled and keep teaching people, don't trust the authorities, don't trust your biology textbook. Instead, figure out why your biology textbook says that, and is it correct? You know, I think you got to question your biology textbooks. And maybe if we stop presenting it like it was so settled, right? Then people would be more interested in questioning it. And so we would do more and maybe better testing. And I just want to say this final part is not even it's not about you, Ken. This is about you, biologist. Stop telling me look at the trees. Stop telling me look at the genes and the fossils. First of all, it's boring. So I study the new stuff because I'm into evolutionary biology. Because let's face it, folks, evolution isn't a flowery process. It's the reason that we have parasites and cancers and viruses and all this horrible stuff. So yeah, evolution you may think gives you life, but if you believe that theory, it gives you death. So maybe evolution is not only a religion, maybe it's a death cult, right? So if you want to be honest about this, folks, the purpose is you should test it. And then you should prove to us that it is what it says it is and that it's not what we're saying it is. So I think if you really want to live up to this man's challenges, you need to listen to Kent Hovind. You need to take up they're going to fire me, Kent, but it's cool. I'm going to come over to Dinosaur eventually and we're going to link up and we're going to school him anyway.
Come on down. No, come on down. Okay, Jay, if a teacher stood up in North Korea in their class and said, students, I don't believe communism really works, what would happen to that teacher?
Maybe bad things. Yeah, probably bad things. Yeah, probably bad things.
If a teacher stood up in a Muslim country and said, kids, I don't think Muhammad was a prophet. I don't think Islam is really true. What would happen to that teacher?
Bad things. Bad things. Yeah.
It hurts me to say this because I love my country and I love America. But it's gotten to the point where if a teacher stands up in a public university or school and speaks out against evolution, they'll lose their job. It's sad. Evolution is a carefully protected state religion. Just like Islam is protected in some countries and communism is protected in some countries, evolution. Here's why. The founding fathers of this country said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They're endowed by their creator with certain rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Where do rights come from? The creator. There's a whole bunch of people who want to overthrow our Christian heritage because they would like a communist society worldwide. And they don't want you to think you've got rights that came from God. They want you to think all your rights came from government. You have the right to drive on the highway.
Yeah, this man is preaching the Bible and the Constitution at the same time. Ken Hovind, you're a bad dude. I see why you got so many followers. Continue. I just wanted to pep you up a little bit. Go ahead.
This is why the evolution theory is very important, because the Bible predicted there would be at the end of time a group of people who would want a one world government. The communists would like a one world government with them in charge. The Muslims would like a one world government, but they want to be in charge. The Catholics for years had a monopoly on everything, and if you went anti-Catholic, they'd burn you at the stake. The evolution is an important foundation theory for the New World Order and the one world government. When they came and arrested me and put me in prison, they said, we want you to go around the property, find every DVD number 5 of his series that you can find. Part 5.
Hashtag defund the police. Don't be putting Ken Hovind in prison. Go ahead.
I was in prison for 9 years for the dumbest thing in the history of the world. I didn't break any laws, but they wanted me to shut up about DVD number 5, the dangers of evolution. This theory is not only unscientific, it's a dangerous theory. We teach the kids they're an animal, and then we wonder, what happened to the kids? Why are they acting like animals? Duh. Look what you taught them for the last 15 years. If evolution is true, is there any such thing as right and wrong? Where do right and wrong come from? Can you tell the kid, hey, it's wrong for you to steal from your neighbor? Well, does the lion think it's okay to steal the baby zebra and eat it? Sure. I bet the zebra don't like it, but the lion thinks okay.
But lions are like, the lions are fine with it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. This is why, is there any such, I've asked atheists all over the world, how do you tell right from wrong? Where's your standard?
And I bet you they be talking about their preferences, don't they? Oh, I like this. I don't like that. Yeah, it's really interesting, Kent. And these are questions that, quote unquote science, really doesn't have answers for. And I do think that part of the problem, what you just put up is the problem. That all of it's the fancy words and the pictures. I'm gonna just be honest with you. People think science is boring, and I'm kind of with them, and it's a thing we need to deal with. Like, we've either got to find a way to make it more interesting. And I think what you're proposing is really part of it. Part of the reason I wasn't interested in science growing up was that it was just taught to you as like, memorize all this stuff, right? Accept it as true, right? And then, hopefully maybe you'll get into med school someday. And other classes, even like history or English, I felt like were more, I don't know, it felt like there were bigger questions to ask, right? Whereas in science class, you're like memorizing the chart and then regurgitating the thing you memorized, where I was like, wait, why did these people go to these people? Oh, they had this thing. And so it was much more interesting. And I think what you're suggesting is true. I actually teach this philosophy of science class with Rob Pennock, right? And we actually teach creationism in our class, straight up. Because the way we teach it is like, if you have this this, I'm gonna call it intelligent design theory. Let's just call it theory, right? Versus say like the Darwinian theory, you should be able to say, okay, here's this theory, here's that theory. Let's put it to the test and then figure out if we can say which one is more scientific or which one is more useful or whatever it might be. And I feel like we start this class by saying, yeah, we're about to do something in this class that no other science class does and most scientists say you shouldn't do. Like when I ask my colleagues about, hey guys, I'm going to debate Ken Hovind, like he's this really famous creationist. Y'all want to give me some tips about like maybe how to represent the scientific perspective? They was like, nah, you shouldn't even debate a creationist. I was like, what do you mean? Why not? And they were like, oh, because we don't think that's science and you're just giving them a platform. I was like, he's famous. I'm not. He's giving me a platform. Like, what are y'all talking about? Like, they just ignorant, Kent. Like, they're literally ignorant. And I'm like, yo, if y'all say science has the goods and there's all these people out here and they don't believe what you're saying, what are the scientists doing? Oh, well, if they came to my class, I'd get to indoctrinate them my way. I'm like, well, if you got the truth, what are you afraid of? Go to where they at and tell them the truth over there. And then they won't do it. So I do think more classes should be like our class where we say, you don't have to believe us about this or that. We'll present them both to you and let it test it. And I know the audience wants me to tell them like what I think the result is, but I'm about to teach the class. So you're going to have to come to my channel and find out because I'm in the business of show. So I'm just here to promote the class. I'm not going to give you the results. The results is you're going to have to test them and find out. And Kent's point is this would be the norm if more classes were like this, but they aren't. So I guess I'm the only shot you got. But Kent, you're right. We got to just put them both out there, all the other theories too, right? And just battle of the theories, all the tests. And then, matter of fact, let's take the theories off the test, right? Let's just do the test and not even say which theories the test come from. And then get the results, and then it's like a blind hypothesis or something, right? I don't know. Well, you tell me. You've been teaching. You taught more science than I have, so you know better than I do. I like Ken Hovind.
This is wonderful. Thank you, sir. An essential part of science is having a standard of measurement for length or weight or volume, okay? We have all kinds of ways that we measure things. Man has settled in on some standards. We've decided a circle should be divided up into 360 parts. Who made that decision? I don't know. It doesn't matter. We're all using it now. It's called 1 degree, okay? Live with it. This is the standard we use, a degree. We have a standard of inches or metric system, meters and millimeters and centimeters. Get a standard. Where's the standard, if evolution is true, where is the standard for right and wrong? What they've done, they've removed the standard. The kids today can't figure out what's wrong. Is it wrong to steal? Is it wrong to cheat on a test? And why would it be wrong?
Kent, also now they're trying to say that's evolution too, right? Oh, we evolved in the groups and we had to evolve group dynamics. And, you know, if we were all killing each other, then we wouldn't have made it this far or whatever. But they can't prove that. They can't observe it. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, to me, social evolution, stuff like that, if it's social evolution, if that's what y'all are going to claim, to me, there's more questions than answers.
Well, that's where I love science. We should teach the kids. The E. coli, any single-celled creature, is phenomenal in its design. E. coli, the way it replicates in 20 minutes, makes a copy of its DNA. You try to copy a whole encyclopedia in 20 minutes by hand. This is unreal what they're doing. And they're real tiny, E. coli. I know you studied with a fellow who was an expert on E. coli. All he ever got after thousands or millions of dollars and a whole bunch of years was more E. coli.
Hey, some of that money went to fund me, so okay, I'm happy about that part. But the rest of it was a waste.
20 times in the first 7 chapters of the Bible, it says they bring forth after their kind. Nobody's ever seen an exception to that. Students could learn all about the amazing complexity of the DNA code and the different bonding methods that they use. They could study all this. The way that E. coli replicates its DNA code is mind-boggling. And this thing is so tiny. 50,000 E. coli side by side would be an inch long. 50,000 of them. The circular DNA of E. coli stored in its supercoiled state. It's not only twisted, it's twisted again. Supercoiled is more complex than your average chromosome in eukaryotic cells. The entire circular chromosome must replicate itself in 20 to 25 minutes using a host of specific enzymes without a mistake. How does Darwinism explain that? The entire E. coli chromosome spins incredibly fast as the replication of the parent chromosomes becomes 2 daughter chromosomes. And you studied this, you know about the backwards looping and all this. It defies explanation to say, kids, this all happened by chance.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, it doesn't even make the copy perfectly, right? So that's a myth. Oh, it's supposed to make a perfect copy. It doesn't make a perfect copy, so they're lying right there.
But it's got a system to check. If the mistake it's making is bad enough, it'll die. It'll be rejected. It won't be replicated.
But then they say the mistakes are what makes it through, and then the mistakes add information, and then they get new stuff from the mistakes, which doesn't really make a lot of intuitive sense to me, but that's what they keep claiming.
Well,
we're on the same team. We're going to have to tag team. You're going to hit them with listen, the Bible says you're wrong, and I'm going to just hit you with, Jay says you're boring, and there's more questions than answers, and we're going to surprise him, Kent. We're going to get big out here, Kent.
All right.
Me and you.
I like it. Come on down. Where are the examples of a mistake in copying the code, adding information? They say this happened. To change an amoeba to a whale would take quadrillions, quintillions, sextillions of changes. Where's one example of a mutation adding information? This would have to happen a whole bunch of times. They're imagining this. That's why I use SpongeBob all the time. Evolution is pure imagination. Just imagine. It happened, boys and girls. Where's the science? There isn't any.
Darwin even said, there's grandeur in this view of life. It's like he was literally saying that this view is phantasmical or something.
I think it's
people don't read it. They don't read it. You can't. I'm sure you've read The Origin of Species, but probably not artists. They haven't read it, and they. Wait, Kent, am I lying? If I'm lying, I'm dying. Doesn't Darwin just ramble on forever about like flowers and details and like it's like he never makes his point, right? He just ramble like it's bad. Yeah, it's true. He's literally famous for how inappropriate his writing style is. And
he saw 14 varieties of finches and concluded they had a common ancestor called a finch. I agree. But then he said, this proves finches are related to bananas. He didn't say it like that, but in his mind, everything's related because he saw 14 kinds of finches. Well, if a farmer sees 40 kinds of cows and says, man, that proves cows are related to mosquitoes, that's insanity. That's not science. Darwin was insane, in my humble, totally unbiased opinion. He believed that what he saw, he did good observation on the finches. He hated birds. He killed every finch he could find so he could measure their beak shape. And he found 14 kinds of finches because he liked worms. Darwin thought it was bad for the bird to eat the worm, and he liked worms, so he killed all the birds he could find.
And talking about observations, he didn't even really observe it because I think he didn't really know what he was looking at. And then somebody else told him it was different species of birds and all that. So Darwin was probably like, I don't even know. I guess I'll take your word for it. But it's probably, Kent, like I said, I just do what they pay me to do, Kent. They told me I should show up, and I was like, they don't really pay me to show up. I do this in my spare time. I just think it's fun. So they're not paying me enough to really challenge you, especially because they're boring, like I said, and you making some good points. So yeah.
Well, let's take just the E. coli as an example. That little bacteria, 50,000 of them laying side by side would be an inch. It has a little motor that turns a hair that spins. This thing swims through the water. You talk about tiny. That motor is in the skin of the bacteria, of the E. coli. It spins 100,000 revolutions per second, 60,000 RPM. That's quite a motor. And it's able to flex back and forth. And the bacteria can sense, I want to swim that way or back up. That motor can stop spinning and reverse and I think it's a quarter of a turn of the motor. Yeah, a quarter turn and reverse. This little motor is in the skin of a bacteria that is so tiny, 50,000 of them would be needed to make an inch. And they want me to think it happened by chance. 8 million of those motors would fit in a period or the cross-section of a human hair. I think it's insanity to teach kids this happened by chance. Why can't we say, this looks like it was designed, boys and girls? And the smaller a creature gets, the thicker its environment feels to it. As things get smaller, the fluid they move through, whether it be liquid or gas, feels thicker to them. The viscosity increases. So a bacteria swimming through water is like a person swimming through peanut butter at 60 miles an hour. I think it's insanity to say humans evolved from bacteria more than 4 billion years ago. Well, if the bacteria can swim 60 miles an hour through peanut butter, sign them up for the Olympics. We're getting worse.
Kent, hang on. Donnie's gone. Donnie went to the bathroom, right? All right, guys, I'm not really supposed to say this, but Kent, you're right. Scientists, stop teaching that stuff. You're wrong. None of this happened by chance. There's no way that happened by chance. There's no way I evolved from an amoeba, especially not by chance. That is absurd and ridiculous. Absurd and ridiculous. Kent Hovind, you might Kent, look, let's just say I cheated, but let's say you won by disqualification. Now, when Donnie come back, right, we're going to pretend that we still debating, like we don't agree with each other, all right?
Okay.
But now, Kent, you're wrong because I don't know, just keep talking.
Well, Jay, I've done 300 debates at universities. You're my first convert. Yay, you believe it. There is no way things evolved. Now, if you come to the conclusion, okay, it had to be designed. I think it's anybody with a brain cell would say that little motor had to be designed. Now, which designer? Is it Allah, Buddha, Jehovah? That's a whole different argument. But getting over that first hurdle, there had to be a designer. That's a major milestone. What'll happen next, about a week from now, it's going to hit you in the middle of the night. You're going to wake up and sit up in bed and say, oh no, there's a designer. Maybe I get to meet him when I die. Maybe he's going to keep a record of everything I did and said and thought about, and maybe I'm in trouble. There's the next step, Jay.
Ken, if I meet him, I don't know about this. I waffle on this one because sometimes I talk a lot of trash. I'm like, if I meet him, I'm ready because I'm standing for truth, right? I'm standing for truth. If I meet him, and what it's going to be then? Not a big deal. But then, Kent, you're right. Sometimes I'll be like, I talk a lot of trash. Yeah, if I meet the maker face to face, yeah. I don't know if you can hear this, but.
I mean, my heart's beating, my hands are shaking.
Ken, I tell people this all the time. You ever hear the atheists that talk about, they say something like, you'll tell them like, okay, what if God came right now and showed you a sign, right, of the biblical truth and everything? And they'll say, oh, well, that doesn't mean I'd worship him. Oh, well, that doesn't mean, oh, no, I would just still question the epistles. Maybe Kent, I ain't gonna lie to you. I'd be doing things we shouldn't be talking about on camera in the pants, right? And scared and falling to my knees and trembling and begging for mercy. Let's just go with that. Donnie's back. No, Donnie, hold me back. Me and Kent don't like each other. We're fighting. It's going to get ruthless in here. I'm glad you came back, Donnie. Oh, man, I was going at him. I almost hurt him. You came back just in time.
I think so.
Thank you,
I think some people were looking for a ruthless showdown, but what they got, they're enjoying, they're loving. So I guess before we get into some audience questions, though, let me throw a question in here. Let's engage it for a little bit just to make this as comprehensive as possible. Very enjoyable discussion, gentlemen. So, Jay, as a teacher yourself,
sure.
And out of genuine curiosity, and then maybe
you
can engage it a little bit. Let's say a student, let's say myself, I was agnostic, on the fence, not quite a creationist, not quite an evolutionist, and I were to inquire about evidence for common ancestry. How would you approach that question, and what lines of evidence would you point them to as something reasonable? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of lines of evidence. And so to some extent, I'd gauge what the student is interested in, right? I think the best entry to evolution is whatever you happen to find fascinating. So, as much as people talk about weird things, like say, some people say maybe life came from another planet and crashed into us, and then we evolved out of a ooze from an intergalactic, asteroid or whatever. I go, if that's what makes you want to read about science, go for it, right? If somebody else is like, oh, I always loved dinosaurs, if somebody says, I always loved dinosaurs and I always loved Kent Hovind and I went to Dinosaur Adventureland and, I really loved it and I just wanted to learn as much as I can about dinosaurs, I'd go just keep learning as much as you can about dinosaurs. I think if, whatever, I think my job is to point students to how science is done. And so I don't really see it as my job to guide them towards certain conclusions. My job is to, find their curiosity, inspire them with it, and then see how, maybe their interest leads them to evolutionary theory. And for a lot of our students, we actually sort of know going into teaching the class that it won't. And for those students, we focus on, can we help you with your writing? Can we help you with your scientific communication skills? Can we maybe get you to think about how this interacts with, if you're going to go to med school or go to school for dentistry? And so, but, there's a lot of other class where I think that's the goal of a particular professor. But for me, I tend to focus on the nature of science.
Okay. The nature of science. Appreciate that response, Jay. Kent, over to you, Kent, with, I guess, some thoughts, response, if you'd like to.
Yeah, we got 8 different topics going here, and this is fine with me. But I think the Christian answer to all of the questions we have in science makes more sense. For example, dinosaurs. The Bible says God made everything in 6 days. Everything, which means dinosaurs had to live with man. Well, it's a biological fact that reptiles never stop growing. And the Bible teaches that before the flood came, the people lived to be 900 years old. That's what it says. Whether we believe it or not is different. But the Bible says they lived to be 900. Yeah. And all over the world, they uncover, when they find an ancient culture and out in the mountains someplace, they discover they have a legend in their language. Oh, they say there was a golden age. Man used to live to be 1,000. There are hundreds of golden age legends around the world. Why? Why would they all have the same legend that man used to live to be 1,000? Well, the Bible says they live to be 900 plus, and reptiles never stop growing. That means they would be huge. That was the age of dinosaurs. So I think the Christians have a very reasonable scientific explanation for the dinosaurs that does not involve evolution. So I really think it's logical to say, man, there's a lot of ways to say this earth cannot be billions of years old. The earth is spinning, but it slows down. Well, if we're slowing down.
So I think religion and science are not, they're sort of different ways to approaching the issue, but I would grant you that I think there are certainly biblical interpretations that are consistent with science. And I say something a lot that I think would probably surprise a lot of people in the audience, but a lot of my evolutionary biology colleagues would agree. And just so you know, Donnie, I'm an evolutionary biologist, right? I don't like being called an evolutionist, but it's no big deal. But I say all the time that I wouldn't be an evolutionary biologist if I wasn't raised a Christian. Right? It was the biblical story and this belief that, God created the universe and everything in it. And then even the redemptive story of Jesus that led me to just sort of a wonder and a fascination of, the creation, right? Like we all live in the creation, right? I don't really care if you call it a creation. That's fine. It's a word to me, right? So we're both looking at the same thing, right? The volcanoes, the animals, the birds, and you're trying to explain it. I'm trying to explain it. And so having the foundation that I think you have led me to want to explore it. Now, I went down a road that was sort of like this particular literal interpretation of it doesn't necessarily have to be, the way you do it to be consistent with science. But that's because the way I was educated. Like I said, I was educated by Jesuits, Catholics who just taught this is theological. Like they taught us that Genesis was a creation narrative. They said this is a creation narrative of the, Judeo-Christian faith, right? So now a lot of Protestants might reject that, but that's what I was taught. So then when I learned science, they were just like, oh, this is this other thing over here called science, and it gives us the scientific method explanation. But there's no reason they have to be in conflict with each other. And so I'm just genuinely conceding. I think that your approach and your thinking on this should be taught, because for a lot of students, to me, it can inspire them to want to learn more. And I have no problem. I'm desperate, right? Most educators are desperate. So if you say there's this thing going on that you don't agree with as a teacher, and you don't even think it's true, or you don't think it's right, but if you bring it into your classroom, your students will pay attention. We like every single time, right? So if bringing religious ideas into the classroom would help my students pay attention, I'm all for it. Now, my science colleagues, they're going to give me a hard time. But again, they're not on our team. because they're the ones who were in their stuffy little science classrooms going, I'll educate who comes through the door. Well, you've already ruled out a lot of students because you're not including their perspective in the classroom, so they're never going to come to you. So I'm saying if opening the door and letting their perspective come in, at least, I'm not saying you got to make it the whole class, but at least as a foundation of there's these different explanations and how do we make heads or tails of them, and let's understand each of them and go from there. I'm actually with you because I'm trying to get everybody in the science classroom. I don't care what it takes to get them in there. I just want them in there. So that's my sense. That's my 2 cents on that.
I will come at my expense and speak at your university to your students.
If I will ask for permission to do that and let you know what happens, I'll let you know. I'm sure Donnie can keep us in touch with each other. I appreciate that, Kent. Really do.
My drdino.com. Our website.
Yeah. And I'm not traveling right now, but if you want to give me a tour or something remotely or something like that, we'll set it up. I'll email. I'll make sure Donnie links us up so we can set something up. Appreciate you.
Great. All right, questions, Donnie. Let's see.
All right, gentlemen.
Yeah. Let's get to the audience questions. Yeah, for sure.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you for the interesting discussion and easy to moderate. So I can sit back, relax, and gather about 500 questions here. So we'll have a solid
Donnie, let me tell you something.
audience.
You work hard at this. You're a great broadcaster. You deserve an easy one once in a while.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work, buddy.
Appreciate it. Gentlemen, did you each want 2 minutes to kind of wrap up your thoughts and points in the form of like a concluding statement?
Well, I'll go first. I like Kent Hovind. Take that, atheist. Deal with it. I like Kent Hovind. I'm a bad guy. I'm in here. I don't care who don't like me. Y'all can all boo me. You can throw stuff, complain, cry to your mamas. I don't care. Me and Kent Hovind cool. And I like Donnie too. Me and Donnie friends. Deal with it. Go ahead. We good.
Right. Short and sweet.
I can't top that. Thank you, Jay. You're welcome down here anytime. Go ahead. Questions.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. Let's get right into the Q&A period. I will notify anybody. This was debate 300, but we got 301, 302, 303, and I think 304 scheduled on the channel. So if you're not yet subscribed, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss out on future debates on Stand for Truth Ministry. So first question comes in from Taylor K. This is a question for Jay. So Jay, she's coming at you. She says, question for Jay. What came first? The atmospheric gases needed to sustain life or the life needed to create the atmospheric gases?
I'm insulted. It's like they didn't listen. Ken, it's like they wasn't listening when I said how boring I think all the other subjects of science are. She lost me at atmospheric gases. Ken, do you know the answer to this question? Because I don't care. Ken, do you know which one came first?
Go ahead, Ken.
Well, the Bible clearly teaches God made the heaven and the earth. He made the air, the atmosphere first. And then a couple of days later, made the plants and then the animals. And so it all fits just fine. The plants breathe in CO2, give off oxygen. We breathe in oxygen, give off CO2. It works great together. I think it had to be a few days apart, exactly like the Bible says. No other way for it to work.
Okay.
Donnie, you're muted. You're muted, Donnie.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I appreciate it. So let me see here. Okay, well, here's the next question. Comes in from California, High Desert Preacher. It's for you again, Jay.
Sure.
They're asking, what about the scientists who say evolution is not true? And looks like he gives a few examples. Dr. Douglas Axe, Dr. Roland Hirsch, so on and so forth. Go ahead.
I never
Jay.
heard any of these people and scientists say things that are not true all the time.
All
right, thank you for the response. Kent, over to you.
Well, the argument from majority opinion has always been a futile, weak, ignorant argument. The fact that the majority believes something doesn't make it true. I mean, if the majority thought the earth was flat, they wouldn't flatten it out. And the majority of Muslims...
I'm like, that's my new flat earth. That's my new flat earth comeback. Go ahead, Kent.
Oh, you drive me nuts. Well, the majority of people in North Korea profess to believe that communism is good because you get killed if you don't believe it. So I think that the fact that they say, well, some scientists believe in creation, most believe in evolution. I don't know if most do believe in evolution, but it wouldn't matter. That's not how you tell truth. Go ahead.
Okay. Next question comes in from, let's see, get an on-topic question. Okay, so All right. Here's a question from Power Word. And this one is for Jay. So I'm guessing that's you, Jay Bundy. So questioner asks, biblical evolution like roses growing thorns happen due to introduction of death and need to survive. This is the reason for bad things. Did you believe in biblical Evo? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe that God worked through natural means. I was what you might call a theistic evolutionist. I was an evolutionary biologist long before I became an atheist.
All right. Thank you, Jay. Kent, is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, I believe the God that I worship made a perfect world. It was awesome. And then as man ruined it with his disobedience and sin. And so thorns and things like that came in later as a result of man's disobedience. And the creation today is struggling under a heavy load. Everything is struggling to survive. Didn't used to be that way. It used to be wonderful, peaceful, and God's going to restore it again someday, back like it used to be. I'm ready for that.
All right, here we go. Next question comes in from Sandals. Question for Kent Hovind. Does Kent agree with devolution? So rather than evolution, okay, go ahead.
I'd have to know what they mean by that word, that things are getting worse. Yeah.
I think so.
Take a look at Washington, D.C., what's happened in the last 100 years. It's getting falling. Everything. Yeah, I think things get worse with time. I'll be 70 this January, and I got a few aches and pains, and yeah, things don't improve with age, okay? I had a tooth pulled a week ago, and it's still bothering me. Went to the dentist this morning. I just keep holding my jaw. So, yeah, if by devolution,
you're more than a conqueror.
Things are...
Kent's out here surviving.
What's that? I didn't hear his question.
Oh, I just said, Kent, you're more than a conqueror. Like, you're surviving. Kent's got a lot going on.
Yeah. Well, I decided as a child, I'm going to try to make dying the last thing I do. So I'm going to go to the end. Okay.
All right. Thank you. And of course, Jay, if there's anything you wanted to add, any points you wanted to put in there?
No. That's fine.
All right. Here we go. Next question comes in from, it looks like
shout out to Sandals. Sandals is a part of the community. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the question and engagement there, Sandals. So next one comes in from Facts and Conspiracy. Question for both. Aside from what you mentioned in this debate, what do you think science has gotten incorrect that most people believe is settled science? Anybody want to volunteer in terms of, okay, go ahead, Kent.
Well, I think what some people call science is completely wrong about the age of the universe and the stars and the earth. Everything we see is winding down. If I told you this ink pen was 9,000 years old, you'd say, no, it can't be, for lots of reasons. They didn't have plastics till after World War II. Oh, okay. I think you could use scientific evidence to limit the age of the earth and universe down to a few thousand years, probably less than 20,000 years. Now, the Bible dates add up to 6,000 for the creation. I see no reason to reject that. So I think science is desperately wrong, what they call settled science about the age of the earth. It's not billions. They're wrong about that geologic column. How can the top layer be younger? Where's it coming from? All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting all the layers. I think it's not common sense to say the layers are different ages. It's not settled science that there's a Jurassic period. There's no such thing as a Jurassic period. And there's no such thing as a fossil record. If you find a bone in the dirt, all you really know is it died. You can't prove it had any children. You sure can't prove it had kids that were different. All over the world, petrified clams are found in the closed position on top of mountains like Mount Everest. I think there was a flood. So I think settled science about the age of the earth is dead wrong.
Mm-hmm. If somebody tells me something is settled science, I just put it in a boring category, and if they keep talking, I try to fall asleep as fast as possible. So, nope.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Donnie, people got to think seriously about science. What do professional scientists do, right? We write grants for funding, right, to get research right? So if something is settled, I can't write to the National Science Foundation and be like, hey, I need a big grant to study this thing that's already settled and there's no reason to study it anymore, right? So we're literally, if something is settled science, it might be of interest to public communicators and science educators, but professional scientists make a living out of what has not been answered yet. So we don't spend a lot of time, if somebody thinks something's settled, we're just moving on to what's unsettled because that's where the money is.
All right. Appreciate that. Jay and Kent. Next question comes in from Alec Cox. This one is for you, Dr. Bundy. So Alec asks for JB, what algorithm went into your study on the digital evolution scaling?
I
Who
use the
programmed
Vita.
software? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I use Avita. It was programmed by Charles Afria. You can Google Avita by DevoSoft. It's been published in, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, Science, Nature, all the big fancy journals, but it's very well known, very well studied. But yeah, it's called Avita, Avida. Shout out to the Ofria Lab and also the Avita Ed. I'm also part of the Avita Ed digital evolution software team. So there's a educational version that's very easy to find. If you just put in Avita -ed, the website will come up, and we have tutorials and workshops and all that. And if you subscribe to my channel, this semester we will be going through all the Avita Ed exercises and learning all about digital evolution. I also stream with Cliff Bohm, and we regularly stream as we're developing our experiments. So you can come over to my channel, learn all about digital evolution. Thanks for the question.
All right. Thanks for the answer. Question now for you, Kent. Comes in from Sandals again. Thank you again. For Kent, if I heard you right, why does the spinning of the earth slow down?
Well, I think it's intuitive. It's also been observed. Any spinning object would have to slow down, especially if it's encountering friction of any kind. The moon, the tide is causing the tides. That is creating what's called the lunar drag. Just the tide going up and down, smashing against the beach, is slowing the earth down. Plus, we have the internal friction under the crust of the earth. It's liquid, the magma down there. So a spinning ball with a hard crust and a soft center has to be slowing down. You have the lunar drag, the solar drag, the tidal drag. There are known factors. The earth slows down about 1,000th of a second every day. Just type in leap second. Most people have heard of leap year. They never heard of leap second. But about every 2 or 3 years, I think they add a second to the clock because the earth is slowing down. Our clocks are going off. Well, now, if the earth is slowing down, that means it used to be going faster. If it's 6,000 years old, this is not a problem. But if you want it to be billions of years old, this is a problem. You get the earth spinning so fast, it would flatten out like a frisbee instead of being a round ball. It's already bulging a little bit at the equator, like I am, but the earth is slowing down. I think it's known. There's no question. The earth is slowing down. Google it. There's hundreds of references to that.
Okay, Kent, thank you. Jay, anything you want to add to that or move on to the next?
Nope, but thanks, Sandals. Appreciate you supporting this, conversation, Kent and I. I know y'all wanted to debate, but Kent Hovind, he just slammed me. He killed me, hit me with the Kent Hovind off the top rope, and I was done. So I just had to hand it to him, and then we had to talk after that.
Well, it's a good conversation. Okay, so hey, debate number 300, and we got 300 people watching. So there we go. Perfect.
Hey, let's get it.
304 now. Okay, so here's a question or maybe more of an argument for you, Kent. Comes in from Paleo Logo, so he's coming at you with a rebuttal. We did a response to him a little while back. Me, you, as in Kent and Matt. So he says an answer to your question, where does the top layer come from? And he says it comes from deposition after erosion. Tectonic uplifts raise rocks up. Then they are eroded and form layers at lower altitudes. Kent, if you'd like to respond to that, go ahead.
Okay, Paleo Logos, focus, Daniel-san. If you take a layer of dirt and move it down and reposition it, it didn't change the age. If you shuffle a deck of cards, it doesn't change the age. This is not the youngest card in the deck now because it's on top. Moving dirt from one location to another does not change the age. The geologic column does not exist. It's fiction. Now, that's the Bible to the atheist, I understand. They talk about the Cenozoic and Mesozoic and Paleozoic and Jurassic, Triassic, Mississippian, Devonian, Silurian. It doesn't exist. It's all it's vaporware.
Kent, you know me. I say, look, take Kent's answer. If you don't like Kent's answer, you already know I think it's boring and you need to go ask a geologist. So we good, Donnie.
All right. Appreciate it. There's a couple comments in here, Kent, if you'd like to respond question-wise. People are saying the Earth's rotation is speeding up, not slowing down.
First of all, I would like to ask, how on earth can that be true? Where would the energy come from to speed up? I mean, it's a simple acceleration formula, mass, velocity, acceleration. The Earth is pretty heavy. What would it take? How much gas would it take to get it going faster? And where is it coming from?
Wait, did Otangelo Grasso just come up here and say that Kent Hovind is wrong? Otangelo, you can't come at my buddy Kent Hovind like that when you were Shroud of Turin guy. Ken, are you a Shroud of Turin guy?
What now?
Are you a Shroud of Turin guy? Do you think the Shroud of Turin is true? That's Jesus' burial cloth?
Oh, I don't know about that. I doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter.
Otangelo, you can't come at Kent like that. You don't got just say nah.
Donnie, just for the record, so nobody uses this against me, if there is a landslide or a mudslide and the mass of the Earth is concentrated toward the center a little bit, 5,000 tons of matter slides down, that would speed the Earth up by concentrating the mass. But that's only a local event, a single event. Overall, generally, the tidal friction, the lunar drag, the internal friction with the internal magma is slowing the Earth down. There may be a few instances. The only thing that could speed it up is the concentrating of the mass. Like an ice skater pulling their arms in, spins tighter. Yeah. Moving the rocks down lower would make the Earth spin a little faster. But that wouldn't explain how the Earth got started spinning to begin with.
Yeah, and I just want to say something that viewers are the problem on the internet. You viewers you guys ruin everything. Donnie, on my channel, I got the Bible nerds that won't stop or talking about this scripture, or they want to go on about the philosophy and the blase and the flavonoids, right? And here we are trying to have a friendly conversation back and forth between me and Kent about evolution on trial. And what do they want to talk about? Tectonic plates and the speed of the Earth rotating and the biochem. Nothing has anything to do with the philosophy of science or digital evolution, which is my specialty. Nothing to do with evolution on trial, which is what Kent Hovind prepared to talk to me about. So basically, I'm being invaded by those folks. You are being invaded by science nerds, Donnie. The science nerds are just invading your chat. They're trying to take over their stream. They're trying to send you all the super chats to distract you. Viewers are the problem. Me, Donnie, and Kent were having a perfectly good time until you guys showed up and ruined everything.
All right, appreciate the enthusiasm. Okay, moving on. We got a super chat. And Jay, this one's for you. This one's for you now. So Angelo Lagruta, thank you so much. He asks, wouldn't the next step of evolution be having lungs, gills, and wings? If we came from a fish, how come we don't have lungs and gills?
You need to go back to school and get a basic education in science.
All right. Thank you, Jay. And Angelo, going at it a little bit. Kent, anything you want to respond with?
I would love to have wings, at least. It'd be hard to put your shirt on. They'd figure out a way to make a shirt that would fit, I'm sure.
Hey, Darwin, evolutionary biologist, Jesus, God, Allah, whoever's listening, hook us up with some wings and we'll revisit this when we have that test taken care of.
All right, guys. Thanks for keeping it fun. Next question comes in from Paleo Logos again. I reworded it a little bit to make it more of a question rather than an assertion during a Q&A period. So Paleo Logos asks, Kent, are you confusing the age of the layer with the age of the sediment?
He is completely confused. All of the layers are the same age. I've been flashing up on screen there are thousands of petrified trees standing up, running through these layers. How long does a dead tree stand up in your neighborhood before it falls down? 4 or 5 years. All of the layers formed in one big flood in the days of Noah. I believe layers are still forming today, but the vast majority of the layers that we see in the earth formed in one big flood. I usually have a screen, little 2 pieces of glass with different colored sand in between. I shake it up, but it broke. I don't know where it is now. I got a couple on our tour. When you can take the tour, I'll show you. Layers can form very quickly. It is not science to say the top layer is younger because it's on top. Google experiments in stratification. Back 30 years ago, a French scientist went to the laboratory in Colorado, the Navy laboratory, where they had a giant flume. The Navy's interested in sedimentation because they park their submarines and hide them in different valleys underwater, and they want to know, hey, did this valley fill in with silt? So sideways movement of the water can create 10 or 15 layers at the same time. Experiments in stratification by some guy with a French name about that big. And so I think the earth spinning and the moon creating the tides, the tidal resistance that it causes the water to go up and down and in and out of the tidal bump. That's going to cause sedimentation, stratification, especially during Noah's flood, when you have an uninterrupted tide, which becomes what they call harmonic tide. If the earth were smooth or covered with water completely equally, the tide would be a 200-foot tidal change, not 5 or 6 feet. 200 feet of water means the water is rushing into that bump at the same speed the earth is turning, which varies with latitude. Here in Lenox, Alabama, we're turning 886 miles an hour. Well, if the water is moving sideways for a half hour or hour or so at that velocity, it's going to cause multiple layers to form. The trees we find standing up all over the world, petrified, running through these layers, is an indication your geologic column is baloney. I know that's your Bible, and you hurt feelings because, I called your Bible a lie. Yes,
Yep.
there is no geologic column.
Preach, Kent. They feelings, your feelings is hurt, chat. And Kent dignified you science nerds with an explanation. All I'm gonna do is say, do I strike you as the type of person that wants to sit around talking about the dating of rocks? Come on, y'all. Go ahead, Donnie. Next question.
All right, thank you. Super chat here. Congratulations to you, Kent. They're congratulating you for debate number 300.
Congrats, Kent. And he's won every single one of them, y'all. Every single one. Tell him, Kent. Undefeated. There we go.
Hey, Jay,
flex competition between Jay and Kent.
I need one of them belts like he's got there. Jay.
Yeah,
Donnie,
Jay, could you send that over to Kent, Jay?
Send
Give me a belt.
shirt. I need a Hawaiian shirt, and I'll send you a replica.
Oh, hey, you got a deal.
Okay, the chat's moving quick. I hope I didn't lose the next. Okay, here we go, I think. Okay. Tanya Brown, question for Jay, the man himself. So, do you think if we had a fair trial today, evolution would be proved true beyond a reasonable doubt?
No, absolutely not. I hope not. They stopped paying people like me if there was no doubts. We wouldn't have jobs. I'd be out of work. I think it would be
no more government grants.
I think it would there would be evidence that there'd be evidence of common ancestry beyond a reasonable doubt. But I just don't like that whole prove true certainty thing. That's more, scientists we ain't into proving business much these days. We find evidence in support of. It'd be up to the jury. But I certainly think there'd be a conviction, right? I just don't think proof is the language I would go with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jay, thank you for that response. Kent, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Right. It depends what you mean by evolution. You have to define the term carefully. But no, macroevolution, cosmic evolution, none of those are scientifically provable. They're all taken by faith. It's a great religion that they believe in, nothing else.
All right. Thank you, Kent and Jay. Jay, did you want a final word on that one or move on?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right, guys. Easy going. Appreciate it. Stephen Tibbetts has a question for JB. Has evolutionary science brought forth even one practical scientific application, or do they just take practical applications and try to make them prove evolution? Jay, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Nah, I think it's a dumb question. Let me ask a question. I'll ask a better question. Here's a really good question that'll get at it and get us something practical. Are you vaccinated? Go ahead, Kent, get at him.
Kent, if you wanted to respond to the question instead.
I can't think of a thing evolution has done for the world except bring in the attitude among kids wow, there's no standard for right and wrong. I can do as I please. I think you look at what's happened in our schools in the last 50 years, it's disaster. And a lot of it's because of this evolution theory.
All right. Thank you. And I think we're coming up at the last couple questions here. Let me see.
YouTube punk.
Okay, here we go. Jeremy Nolan.
YouTube punk. Go back to YouTube punk.
Was there? Oh, yeah. Last super chat that came in was, there we go. YouTube punk. $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Just bought me a coffee. Can we expect more talks between Jay Bundy and Kent Hovind? So it looks like a lot of people had some
Kent,
fun
I'm
here.
proposing. Will you engage me in further discussions?
Anytime.
There we go. Boom. We booked it. There it is.
Booked
Wait,
and
Donnie,
ready to
here's
go.
the question. Donnie, will you have a conversation with flying Flying Wayne for my channel.
Of course.
There it is. Now, and
Flying
look,
Wayne
you got.
anytime,
We just booked 2
anytime.
matches. We just booked 2 for you guys.
Tag team battle. So here we go. Final question of the night. We made it, gentlemen. Hour and a half
Thank
has flown
you.
by.
All right, let's go.
Thanks for making it fun, entertaining, engaging, interesting. Jeremy Nolan, question for Kent. In the Garden of Eden, were plants poisonous, or did they evolve to become poisonous after the fall of man?
Well, I think the Garden of Eden, everything was perfect. The Garden of Eden was actually in Lenox, Alabama. We love it here. That's a tough. I don't know any scientific way to answer that for sure, but it appears like the problems, the sin came into after because of man's fall, which was probably about 100 years after the creation, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit or whatever they did. So I think the poisonous. Some things are recessive, like for instance, mosquito bites and things like that. If you get a high voltage spark, people argue about that, but I use it all the time. Mosquito bites, ant bites, you shock it, it neutralizes it. I think the original creation had probably greater oxygen concentration, maybe 32%, probably higher air pressure, and think they wouldn't be poisonous. They did studies at the university, or someplace in Texas, I've got this someplace, where they took cottonmouth snakes, raised them in a hyperbaric chamber under high pressure, extra oxygen. They were not poisonous. I don't know any more about it than that, but sounds reasonable that God made a perfect world and man wrecked it.
And I think it's a perfect note to end on, because I'm going to say, I think Kent believes that the Garden of Eden was like a state of perfection on the earth, right, Kent?
Yeah.
And I wish this planet was still there. So Kent and I both would prefer to be in the Garden of Eden, and I think that's a perfect commonality to end on.
Good.
All
Come
right.
on down, visit.
For sure, for sure. Soon as I get out this house, Kent. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, Kent, Jay, thank you so much for another fantastic debate. Here to the audience, thank you for joining, and thank you for sending in all of your fantastic questions. If you're not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. And again, share this content around. Standing for Truth
All right.
is out.